Lena sat quietly in the living room, glancing through the family photo album that had been left out on the coffee table. She knew her stepson, Jack, wouldn't be too thrilled with her going through these photos. But it was one of those rare moments when the house was calm, and she found herself reflecting on how far they'd come since she married his father 2 years ago. When Lena had first entered Jack's life, it felt like a stranger trying to fit into a picture that had already been drawn. Jack had been cold, distant, almost angry. She understood. He had lost his mother not long before, and the last thing he wanted was someone else trying to take her place. She never tried to replace his mother, never could. But she did try to be a source of support, even if Jack never asked for it. Every day was a silent negotiation of understanding, of patience, and most importantly, of respect for boundaries. It wasn't until one late autumn afternoon, when Jack was 17, that things began to shift. Lena was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea, when Jack came home, his face flushed from the cold air, his eyes tired and distant. She knew something was wrong. He hadn't spoken much since he got back from a visit to his grandmother's house, but tonight, there was something heavier about his silence. "Hey, Jack, do you want to talk about it?" Lena asked, her voice soft but insistent. Jack hesitated, standing near the door for a moment. He finally slumped into a chair across from her, running a hand through his messy hair. "It's just everything. My mom. I'm trying to figure out how to feel. It's been years, and I'm still so mad she's gone. And now you're here, and I don't know where I fit anymore." Lena felt the weight of his words, her heart tightening. She'd never pushed him, never tried to force a bond, but she'd always hoped this moment would come, when Jack would let down his guard, even if just a little. "I can't replace your mom, Jack," she said gently. "I don't want to. But if you ever need someone to listen, or if you need space, or even just someone to be here, I'm not going anywhere. I'll give you the time you need, but I'll also be here when you're ready." He looked at her for a long time, his eyes searching hers, as if trying to find some sort of truth in her words. For a moment, there was only the quiet of the house around them, and Lena wondered if she had said the wrong thing. But then Jack nodded just slightly. "Thanks," he whispered, and for the first time in a long while, Lena saw something shift in him, a tiny glimmer of trust. That night, they sat together in silence, the warmth of the kitchen around them. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Over the next few months, their relationship slowly transformed. Jack started opening up more, not just about his grief, but about his hopes and dreams, his fears about the future, his struggles at school, and his complicated feelings about his father. Lena didn't have all the answers, but she listened, offering her quiet support when he needed it most. It was never an easy journey, but it was one they both walked together. And as time went on, the bond between them grew, quiet but steady, built on patience and understanding. Jack began calling her Lena more often instead of my stepmom, and sometimes, after a difficult day, he would come find her, just to sit in the same room, even if no words were spoken. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. In the end, they learned that family wasn't about perfection, or even being bound by blood. It was about trust, understanding, and the willingness to be there for one another, even when it seemed impossible. And slowly, the bridge between them grew stronger, until it was no longer a bridge at all, but simply the quiet, unspoken bond between two people who had learned to love in their own way. As the years went by, Lena and Jack continued to navigate their relationship, now in a place of mutual respect and quiet understanding. Jack, no longer the angry young man he once was, had started to take his place in the world. He graduated high school and decided to attend a college in another city, an opportunity that excited him but also filled Lena with a bittersweet feeling. They had come so far from the awkward silences and distant glances of those early days. In many ways, he had become the son she never expected to have, though they both knew their bond was unique, formed by a series of small moments, those quiet conversations, and the time they spent in each other's company. The night before Jack left for college, Lena found him in the kitchen, standing by the window, staring out at the stars. He had been unusually quiet all evening, and she could feel the weight of the goodbye hanging in the air. "You ready for this?" Lena asked softly, leaning against the doorframe. Jack didn't answer right away. He turned his head, meeting her eyes for the first time that evening. "I think so," he said. "But I'll miss you, you know." Lena's heart softened. She had always known that Jack had a lot of emotions he didn't always express, but hearing him say it aloud hit her differently. It wasn't just about him leaving. It was about all that they had shared, the unspoken understanding, the bond they had built from nothing. "I'm going to miss you too," she replied, walking over and standing beside him at the window. "You've grown so much, Jack. I'm proud of you. And I'll always be here, no matter where you are." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I know." They stood there for a while, watching the night fall around them. In that moment, it felt like they had said everything they needed to, but in a way, nothing needed to be said at all. The silence between them was comfortable now, a sign of the peace they had found in their relationship. The next morning, as Jack loaded up his car with bags and boxes, Lena stood at the door, watching him prepare for this next chapter of his life. His father was there too, helping with the last few things, but it was clear that Jack's departure marked a milestone not just for him, but for their entire family. "Take care of yourself," Lena said, giving Jack a hug before he climbed into the car. "You've got this." Jack pulled back slightly, looking at her with gratitude in his eyes. "I will. And, Lena, thanks for everything." She smiled, feeling a lump in her throat. "Anytime." As he drove away, Lena stood there for a moment, watching the taillights disappear into the distance. It wasn't the same as watching a son leave home. It never had been, but it was a moment of growth for both of them. Jack was finding his own way, and so was she. And in that quiet goodbye, Lena knew they had reached a place neither of them had expected when they first met. Their relationship had been built on patience, trust, and the small moments of connection that had slowly transformed into something real. As the days turned into weeks, Lena sent Jack messages now and then, a casual, "How's everything going?" or "I hope you're getting enough sleep." And every time, he responded with warmth, a reassurance that they still shared a bond, even from a distance. Though life would continue to change, and their paths might diverge, the understanding between them remained constant, a steady thread that would always tie them together, no matter how far apart they might be. Months passed and the seasons shifted, but Lena's life felt different now. With Jack away at college, the house was quieter, and though she had grown used to the calm, there was a subtle emptiness she hadn't anticipated. The daily rhythm of their life, those small moments, the shared meals, the occasional deep conversations, had become a cherished part of her routine. Without Jack, there was a void that nothing seemed to fill. She kept busy, of course. Work, her own hobbies, and spending time with her husband, Mike, kept her occupied. But still, there were days when she found herself glancing at Jack's old room, wondering what he was doing, if he was okay, or if he ever missed her too. Then one evening, months after Jack had left, she got a call. It was late, later than she expected to hear from him. "Lena?" Jack's voice on the other end was hesitant, tired. "Hey, Jack. Everything okay?" she asked, her heart tightening with concern. There was a long pause before he spoke again, his voice quieter. "I don't know. I think I messed up. I had a test today and I didn't study enough and, I don't know. Everything's just piling up. I don't know how to handle it all. I thought I could do this on my own, but I'm not sure." Lena felt the familiar pull to comfort him, to be that steady presence he had come to rely on. "Jack, I'm so glad you called me. I know things are hard right now, but you don't have to do this on your own. You can always reach out, even when you feel like you're falling behind." She paused, letting her words sink in. She had learned over time that sometimes the most important thing she could offer wasn't advice or solutions, but a willingness to listen without judgment. "I don't know if you realize this," she continued, "but you've already come so far. I'm proud of you, even when things feel messy. No one expects you to be perfect, Jack. It's okay to stumble. It's part of growing up. You're not alone in this." On the other end of the line, there was a long silence. Lena could almost hear the weight lifting from his shoulders. When Jack spoke again, his voice was more composed, though still tinged with vulnerability. I know. I guess I needed to hear that. Thanks, Lena. I'll figure it out. You will, she reassured him. I believe in you. Just take things one step at a time, okay? I will. And, I'll call you again soon. Thanks for always being there. Lena smiled softly, the familiar warmth of their connection filling her heart. Anytime, Jack. Anytime. As she hung up, a sense of peace settled over her. In that moment, Lena realized something important. Even though Jack was growing up and becoming more independent, their bond didn't weaken. Instead, it had evolved. She was no longer just the woman in his father's life. She had become someone he could turn to when things got hard, someone who could offer him a steady presence in a world that often felt uncertain. A few weeks later, Jack came home for a short break. He didn't tell her he was coming. He just showed up at the door, standing there with his backpack slung over one shoulder and a hesitant smile on his face. Jack. Lena exclaimed, her heart leaping. What are you doing here? I wasn't expecting you. I know, he said, stepping inside. I needed to be home for a bit. I think I missed it more than I realized. Lena smiled warmly, feeling the familiar rush of affection for him. I'm glad you're here. They spent the next few days reconnecting. It wasn't just about the physical presence of him in the house again. It was about the deeper understanding that had developed between them over the years. It was no longer about figuring out who they were in relation to each other. It was simply about being there for one another, without needing to explain everything. One evening, after dinner, as they sat together on the couch, Lena asked, "How's everything going at schools?" Jack shrugged slightly, but smiled. Better. Still figuring things out, but I feel a little more confident now. Thanks for being there when I needed to talk. Lena looked at him, her heart full. I'm always here, Jack. No matter what. And I'm proud of you. You've come so far. He met her gaze with a mix of gratitude and a quiet acknowledgement of all they had been through together. In that moment, it wasn't about the struggles or the challenges they'd faced. It was about the connection they had built, the unspoken understanding that had carried them through. As the days passed, Jack prepared to return to college, but this time, it felt different. There was a sense of peace between them, a quiet knowledge that even in the spaces between their conversations, they would always be connected. And for Lena, that was more than enough. When the day came for him to leave again, Jack gave her one last hug before driving off. I'll call you soon, he said, his voice steady but warm. I'm looking forward to it, she replied, smiling as she watched him drive away. She stood there for a while, watching the car disappear into the distance, but this time, there was no emptiness. Just a quiet certainty that no matter where their paths took them, they would always find their way back to each other. And in that truth, Lena found peace.